It's Thursday, time for Worldview with Denis Campbell. Denis is editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine, also author of the book Billionaire Boys Election Freak Show. Denis, I think in the context of the Newtown, Connecticut, Sandy Hook school shootings and, of course, all of the gun discussions that have come up, and now we're anticipating the first NRA press conference since the incident, I believe it's going to be tomorrow, I think it would be interesting to look at gun legislation around the world and the effect that it has had on crime, not as the ultimate factor for what the U.S. should do, but simply as some points for comparison.
Well, gun laws have been very, very strong in the United Kingdom and the European Union for a number of years. Particularly when you look at the UK, there was an incident similar to Newtown that occurred in a primary school called Dunblane Primary School in Scotland, and that occurred back in 1996. Now, I'm looking to get the actual totals here, but it was a lone gunman who came in. He killed 16 school children and one adult before committing suicide himself. That led to the passage in 1997 of the Firearm Amendment Act and a sister act, which follows the Amendment Act 2. Those effectively banned all firearms in private ownership in the United Kingdom. For the first couple of years afterwards, there was still a number of deaths and a number of incidents, but about 3 to 4 years after, everything tapered down, and now the latest numbers we had were for 2011, where we had 39 deaths in the United Kingdom. So legislatively, they went much, much further than anything proposed by either the Obama administration or any of the people that were talking about the Newtown tragedy.
Right, and we've also talked about in Australia, they actually had, while not banning handguns, there was a ban on more lethal weapons, and there was actually a buyback that took place, and also a drastic reduction in those gun-related homicides. Now, there is something
also
interesting.
had a number of stories I've seen on U.S. Media about buybacks in major metropolitan cities, resulting in thousands and thousands of firearms in each of the major metropolitan cities just since the Newtown shooting.
You indicated one thing that's an interesting point, which is there's this interesting article in the Chronicle of Higher Education looking at a number of myths related to gun regulation and ownership and gun violence, and there really are myths both on the left and on the right. And an interesting one is that when people talk about the assault weapons bans that are being discussed here in the U.S., most of these shootings don't take place with the guns that would actually be banned by that legislation. And really, you're getting to the point here when talking about a ban on handguns, because ultimately, homicides mostly are connected to handguns, putting aside the few mass shootings that we have. So in the UK, it was very, very effective.
It was indeed. I'm not so sure you're ever going to be able to get a full ban on handguns. I think even Democratic Senator Schumer came out earlier yesterday or today saying that progressives need to get over it, that you're never going to ban guns for protection or for rifles. I think what we're trying to see, rifles for hunting, excuse me.
Sure.
I think what everybody's trying to get to is, this horrendous crime in Newtown was with a Bushmaster assault weapon. There were two Glock automatic pistols with extended ammunition clips. And I think they're trying to at least start there, and they're trying to be as comprehensive as they possibly can. Now, I don't think you're ever going to get to a stage with the number of guns that are out there available in the U.S. that you're going to ban them. But I'm hoping that, these restrictions and also the elimination of these gun show purchases without background checks and, the literal black market that exists in these gun shows will be brought to account. And anything that you can do to reduce the number of firearms is going to be considered a victory in this case.
Now, talk a little bit about just general attitudes towards guns in the UK. I mean, certainly there's a mix of urban and more rural settings in the UK in the same way that there are in the US. Talk a little bit about when this ban was proposed and put in place. What was the reaction? Are there pro-gun lobby groups like the NRA? What's the attitude?
No, there's nothing like the NRA here, believe me. That's been taken over and co-opted by the complete right-wing nutter fringe of the GOP. There are people that hunt here. There are hunters. They all know how to fire. They all have practice. They all know how to use that. If anything, there's been a bigger fight over the ability to hunt for foxes with dogs, corner and actually have them killed by dogs. That's been banned in the last couple of years, and that's created much more of a furor than you would ever see over anything such as this. There was an initial furor over the banning of handguns. That died down, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I personally could live in a country that would have liberal gun laws anymore. I've lived in the Netherlands, I've lived here, and I don't have to worry about my safety from gun violence anywhere on this part of the continent, and frankly, in most countries that I travel to.
Now, in the U.S., the discussion is a little bit different because we do have this Second Amendment, which of course is discussed, and the meaning of it and the intent is discussed quite a bit. However, putting that aside for a second, when we look at the idea of guns for this idea, we actually had a guy on the show earlier in the week, Larry Pratt, who brought up this idea of you having guns because if the government is the only one that has the guns, that's bad, and that's how bad things happen. And people apply this to, hey, if the police are the only ones with the guns, I don't like the way that goes. And interestingly enough, I know some left-wingers who say, listen, I don't like guns, but the one thing that makes me think twice about this is if only the government has the guns, something about that worries me a little bit. Is there that attitude at all in some areas in the UK?
Not that I've seen. I mean, we have a couple of political parties that are on the fringes that do try to incite, a lot of this sort of talk, but it never gets anywhere. We don't have the same issues around abortion that you have in the States. We don't have the same issues around a lot of the white-hot social issues that you see there. I mean, it's relatively quiet and calm when it comes to gun ownership. As a matter of fact, for many decades, in this country, the police did not carry firearms at all. They had billy clubs, then it graduated to, a few of them in special SWAT-like units had guns. Now, pretty much most of the beat cops in the major cities do have guns, or they have tasers, all of which are very effective. And there is a concern about an over-militarization of the police, but I don't think it's really gotten to the stage where anybody's particularly worried. I think, the worry that the government is you need to have your gun to protect some sort of government overreach or uprising, that's a bit crazy, nor do I want to be relying on the word of colonials from 235 years ago to determine what gun laws should be. I mean, that Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia at the state level, and that was the whole purpose of that, and that has been so twisted and contorted by the Supreme Court and others along the way in test cases to the point where it's nowhere near recognizable what the founders and the framers had in mind in the first place.
All right, well, certainly significant gaps between American and British attitudes towards gun ownership. We've been speaking with Denis Campbell. He is editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. Check out the book, Billionaire Boys Election Freak Show. Denis will be back next week for the last Worldview segment of 2012. Denis, thanks as always.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break. Stay tuned. Plenty more after this.